Chapter 7 Buttons for Lunch from the Friendship War. At our table in the cafeteria, the eating part of the lunch period is over quickly. Since the main event was Ellie's idea, she takes charge, which is what I thought would happen. Let's get the table cleared off. Yeah, but maybe keep your trays. That's Hank interrupting Ellie. She shares a look at him before continuing. And yes, keep a tray if you want to. Once everyone is back and settled, Ellie says, I think Grace should go first. Then we can go on around the table. To the left. So, besides the buttons you had yesterday, did you find any others at home? Yes. I'm lost, scattered, totally flustered, because my plan was to wait until everyone else was done and then dump out bag after bag of buttons and calmly enjoy everyone's amazement, especially Ellie's. And now I don't know what to do. Plus, my stomach is still hurting. I reach into my backpack and pull out one bag of a mix of green, blue, red, and yellow buttons, all about the size of a nickel. I have these. I pour the buttons onto a tray and slide it to my left. And in a flash, I see why Ellie started things off this way, so that her buttons will be the last ones revealed. Ellie smiles at my tray. Nice colors, she says. But to me, it sounds like she's only being polite. Cody is on my left, and from the pocket of his hoodie, he pulls out a dark blue sock with a huge bulge down in the toe. Ew, that's gross, Taylor slides as far away from Cody as she can get. What? It's not stinky, if that's what you're worried about. And in case you didn't know it, plastic bags are terrible for the environment. Cody empties his buttons onto a tray, then stuffs the sock back into his pocket. There are 4 or 5 bright orange ones, 3 large red ones, several dozen in different shades of gray and tan, 15 or 20 black ones, and then lots of smaller white buttons. To my eye, the most interesting buttons on his tray are the largest black ones. They have an anchor and rope design cut into the surface. I've got 30 or 40 like that. I point at one. I'm pretty sure it's a US Navy button. Cody picks it up. Yeah, that's what my mom said. These were on my dad's old jacket, but he burned a big hole in it on a fishing trip, and she only kept the buttons. And that's it for Cody. Taylor starts pulling small plastic bags out of her backpack. When her mom was in junior high, she and her big sister got into decorating stuff with buttons. Lampshades and coasters and glass jars, all kinds of things. We still have some of the coasters, and my mom kept all the buttons they never used. I'm not allowed to get them mixed together. We've got some other regular buttons too, but I didn't bring them. There are at least 15 bags on Taylor's tray, and even though the colors are different, the buttons look identical, each a little bigger than the kind used on the front of a shirt. Kevin is next, and his buttons aren't in a plastic bag or a sock. He just pulls a few handfuls from his pockets. These are from the sewing box in our family room. There are more, but I was almost late for the bus this morning, so that's it. These look a lot like Cody's mix, only I don't spot any US Navy buttons. But I do see 4 that are made of pewter. They all have the same raised design on the surface. A swan. It's Hank's turn, and he stands up, spreads out 5 white sheets of poster board, each one a little bigger than a regular piece of printer paper. Every sheet has buttons on it, mounted in rows and columns, and every button is fastened in place with thin black wire thread into holes poked through the board. I searched for all the loose buttons at my house yesterday, and then I got them organized first by color, then by shape and size, and also by the number of holes they have, 2 or 4, except for the buttons like this brass one and this round topped blue one. This kind of just has a single loop on the back. I recorded how many of each separate kind I have. That's the number I wrote underneath some of them. And I mounted the buttons like this because I looked online, and this is sort of how collectors organize them. I'm not really done yet. Everyone is kind of blown away by Hank's presentation. But I'm not surprised. Hank and I teamed up for the fourth grade science fair when we were working at his house. One Saturday, I saw his butterfly and moth collection, over 150 different species, from tiny ones with delicate white wings to a brilliant green Luna moth bigger than my dad's hand. Each insect was perfectly mounted and labeled. 6 or 7 other kids have come over to stand around our table. Some from my homeroom, others from Mr. Scott's and Mrs. Casey's room. A few fifth graders, too. Everyone is leaning forward, and they remind me of a quiet audience at one of those golf tournaments on TV. Brooke and Diana didn't bring a lot, about as many as Kevin. The most interesting thing on either of their trays is some cloth covered buttons Brooke found. Finally, it's Ellie's turn. We've got at least 12 extra spectators now, and she smiles at them and says, "Sorry there's not enough room for you to sit at the table, but I hope you can see everything anyway. First of all, I have some military buttons. They are very special." Ellie pauses, making sure she has our full attention. My great great grandfather joined the United States Army in 1918, and then after World War I, he stayed in the Army until he became a captain. And these are buttons off some of his clothes. These huge ones are from a heavy overcoat. The oldest buttons, these brown metal ones, they are actually on his uniform when he was fighting in France during the war. And these shiny brass ones came from his captain's uniform later on. Now, these 6 buttons, they're from a U.S. Marine uniform that my grandmother's brother wore. I never met him because he died in the Vietnam War when my grandmother was still in high school. I'll pass them around, but please don't take them out of the protective bag. Ellie has used 2 different cafeteria trays now, and she has 5 more stacked in front of her. She's got a whole little show planned out, like something on a history channel. I don't know whether to be impressed or annoyed or jealous. So all 3 feelings are banging around inside me. And Ellie keeps going. These 9 buttons, they're from my great Aunt Ellen's wedding dress. She's the person I'm named for. See how they shine when you tilt them? They're made from this semi-precious stone called white opal. Aunt Ellen gave them to my mom so that I could wear them someday on my wedding dress, and I didn't even know that until last night. So amazing! The wedding dress buttons, also in plastic, get to parade down the table on a tray of their own. I think these might be my favorite. My dad told me that back in 1898, his great grandparents bought a farm in southern Illinois, and these 2 buttons came from a pair of overalls that my great great grandfather wore almost every day. Ellie passes them to me. They're made of brass, and raised up on the front of each button are our 2 words, stronghold. I want to ask her what else she knows about her great great grandparents, but Ellie's not slowing down for anything. Okay, so these 12 shiny black buttons, They're carved from a stone called onyx, and my mom told me how she wore them on a long blue gown. There's a muffled laugh to my left, but it's not about Ellie's show. Kevin and Cody have moved, so they're sitting next to each other, and my tray is between them. They're piling up buttons, seeing who can build the tallest stack before it topples. Ellie looks, too, and she pauses to frown at them. But the guys don't stop. She's taking too long, and she knows it. I've got this one last thing. My grandmother on my mother's side of the family, after my grandfather died, she took all his wool business suits and used the cloth to make a big quilt. And I've seen it. Mostly gray and blue and brown, kind of ugly. But she also kept every single button from all of those suits. And here they are. And it's like all I have left of my grandfather now is this little bag of buttons. Don't you think that's just so sad? It's very still. Kevin, Taylor, Brooke, Hank, all the kids around the lunch table are genuinely moved by what Ellie just said. I feel a little choked up too, and kind of ashamed, because I've been sitting here gritting my teeth while Ellie does her dramatic, super expanded show and tell, and I'm feeling like she's showing off. And of course, Ellie is showing off, but this moment, it's a side of her I haven't seen very often. Maybe only 3 or 4 times in all the days we've spent hanging around together. And what made Ellie get so thoughtful and full of feelings? Some old buttons, which is totally strange. But it's also touching and sort of sweet. And seeing that, it's a good reminder that Ellie knows how to be sweet when she wants to. And this makes me happy in a way I hadn't expected. Ellie knows she just hit the high point of her big show. So all of these other buttons, they're just from sewing projects and stuff. As Ellie pours the contents of a large Tupperware container onto her last 2 trays, I can tell a lot of these buttons are nicer than the ones other kids had, probably just from more expensive clothes, maybe from Paris like her sneakers. And now I'm mad at myself for getting all snarky and jealous again, because that's the problem. Ellie keeps making me feel this way. And of course, this is my perfect opportunity to make her feel jealous. About 15 other kids are standing around our table now, and I've got a chance to one up the one uppiest girl in the world, to show that Ellie does not have the most and best and prettiest knot this time. All I have to do is reach down into my backpack and pull out 7 other plastic bags and then drop my button bomb, a massive assortment of colors and design and sizes. Kaboom! But I don't. It doesn't feel something a best friend would do. That's all. Or even just a friend. And it isn't like Ellie put on her little show to try to make me feel jealous. She's just being herself. And besides all that, I still kind of like this feeling that I've got a secret. It's like I'm super rich and no one else has a clue. Hey, Grace, Cody and I are trying to figure out a game here, and we need 6 green buttons and 6 blue ones. Do you maybe want to swap some buttons with us? The question catches me by surprise, and I hear myself saying, no, that's okay. Just go ahead and take the ones you want. I've got a lot there. Really? Thanks. So could I have 4, but all different colors? It's James Kinney, one of the kids from Mr. Scott's homeroom. Sure, I say, then some other kids jump right in. Could I have 4? How about 5? I'm almost laughing now. Anybody who wants to can take up to 6 buttons from my tray, okay? And right away, everyone waits for a turn to take 6. including all the spectators, plus Ellie. Then Ellie says, and if anybody wants to take one or maybe two buttons from my last tray right here, go ahead. Because my mom said I could do whatever I want with them. And everybody takes one or two, including all the spectators plus me. Some other kids begin drifting over to see what's going on. And as Ellie quickly gathers up her buttons, she says, I'm really glad I thought of this. It was kind of fun, don't you think? A few kids smile at her, but most of them are still gathered around my tray, trying to decide if they picked the right buttons or if they should trade some in for different colors. The tray is almost empty. 4 minutes later, when the bell rings, I walk out of the cafeteria headed for math class with Mrs. Lang. And I've got the strongest feeling that something just happened, but I'm not sure what. So I lay out the facts, which are simple. A bunch of kids looked at a bunch of buttons from a bunch of different homes and places, and then a bunch more kids gathered around to watch. Another fact. When I offered some free buttons, nobody refused. Everybody took 6 buttons, and also 1 or 2 of Ellie's. So right now, more than 20 kids are walking around school with 7 or 8 buttons clicking in their pockets. Buttons none of them even knew they wanted until a few minutes ago. Another odd fact, it felt so easy to give most of mine away, actually. I just waved goodbye to about 130 buttons. But Ellie, she really didn't want to give away even one of hers. How come? That's simple too. Ellie's buttons have history. They mean something to her. The way the smooth gray stone on my dresser means something to me. But those boxes of buttons from Grandpa's mill, to me, they're just buttons. The main fact, these completely ordinary little objects seem to be changing right in front of my eyes. But how? And why? That's not clear, so I'm going to need more data. The only thing I'm pretty sure of, whatever's going on, it's not over.